This is Market Makers. I'm Sarah Eisen. Revamping RadioShack, the retailer posting earnings with actually stronger than expected revenue. However, second quarter loss there widened as margins were weakened by promotional and clearance efforts. So will the struggling retailer be able to reinvent itself? We've got the right guest, former chief marketing officer for Kodak and Bloomberg contributing editor, the always opinionated Jeffrey Hayzlett joins us now. Are you having a little flashback to your Kodak days?
You know, this sounds a lot like the playback, in terms of the playbook that we had back then. It didn't have the runway, and that's one of the biggest things that people are saying about RadioShack. Do they have the runway? And they brought in a CEO who revamped Walgreens and then sold it. And I think what we're seeing here is not the show Flip This House, but Flip This Shack. And I think what he's doing is getting it ready to go out and sell. The CFO's gone, the CIO's gone. He just brought a new CMO who worked at the agency that represented Walgreens. To me, it's the same kind of playbook, clean up the stores, make them look a little bit better, and then get them ready to sell.
Jeffrey, but to whom? I have to imagine only private equity firms would be interested in this, dismantle it, sell off the parts, and that's that.
That's probably the case that you're probably going to see here. I don't know that another chain wants to do it. It's too bad because a lot of people really do like the store, although if you go to Yelp and start looking around at some of the reviews, or even the people that said, that I went out to in terms of my social media, they said, is it still around? Is it still around? And that's what you tend to see here. And I think what they should do, if they're going to revamp it, really redo it, is kind of go back to their geekness that they used to have. They tried to be a little bit of everything, try to compete with Best Buy, and that's really hasn't been working for them. As you can see, they're $712 million in debt. They're down for, what, 40-some% in earnings over last year.
But I'm glad you brought up Best Buy, because that's a comparable example. And Best Buy has turned itself around, the new CEO, Hubert Joly, from this showrooming idea where you come in, look at electronics, go buy it online, buy price matches and other strategies like this. You don't see that as an option for RadioShack?
I don't see it for RadioShack. I mean, RadioShack, they're doing some things. They don't have the website to be able to do it, and they say it's even underdeveloped. They are doing some things of taking some discontinued products and moving it back onto online, but really they can't compete with that price thing. I think if they did something like, come for the tech, stay for the service, but yet their service, they've really got to revamp that service. They've got to really strengthen that customer service to do it.
And to Sarah's point, I mean, it seems like Best Buy stole that line, right? They have the Geek Squad. We're going to come to your house. If you don't even know how to plug this in, we are going to plug it in for you.
Well, he's trying to get some of that back. I mean, they just put in dozens of do-it-yourselfer magazines. They just redid about 10 stores, and they're going to redo about 10%. They just don't have the money to be able to redo them all, and the franchises don't either. So it's going to be a mismatch, and I think that's why you're going to see the thing get wrapped up and sold. Now, as an owner myself of my own businesses, I like to make sure that I hold on to everything I can, and you hate to see that, but that might be the case here.
Are there certain parts of the business that are more valuable than others?
The real estate itself, and obviously the franchise agreements, the franchises themselves, and having that relationship and operating like that, that should be worth some good money.
So let's go back to your experience at Kodak for a moment. That came down to technological shifts. Companies need to deal with a changing technology and changing consumer habits. Did RadioShack just totally miss the boat?
Well, I think it comes down to somebody, actually, Thomas Lee had tweeted me back out a little bit. It says, should it be successful, it needs a purpose. And so just like Kodak needed that purpose and needed to find itself, move beyond, the film into a new electronic or digital world, this company needs to do the same thing.
And what is the purpose? What is specifically the purpose?
In terms of RadioShack? Yeah. It's got to be something that differentiates them from the big box retailers that they've got out there. And I don't think they have it yet.
Is there a life lesson, a learning lesson that RadioShack could take, for example, from a company such as Kodak?
Well, I think from any company is be relevant, right? And that's really what, if you got something that people want, they'll come to you. And if you give great service for it, they'll come back again and again and again. Again, look at what most people say. Ask your friends. They're out there saying, they're still around. I didn't know they still existed. That's a problem. It's tough to overcome that. Huge, huge chasm to do. I mean, you got to ask yourself, what are they going to do to jump the shark here?
And what about the marketing message? What do they need to convey?
Well, it's got to be a little bit better than scantily clad models, selling Dr. Dre, which is what they started to do here recently, right? With the headphones. It was cool. It got new people back in, but it won't sustain it. If you don't look like that when you go in, if you don't act like that, again, a brand is a promise delivered, and they're not delivering delivering on a real promise yet.
Embrace their geekiness.
I think so. I think that was cool. That's what we, you know, when I go to RadioShack, I used to go there to go get batteries and get the things I needed to fix the things that broke, those electronic things. And I think that's some of the key things that they really have.
Yeah, me too. There was one near me in college. We used to go for batteries all the time.
But see, then you're saying college. I know that was only like last year or the year before.
Okay,
but that is the key point. That's the key point I got to say, is that people are saying when I used to, and that's the real problem. That's the real problem.
All right, Jeffrey Hayzlett, always good to get your advice and your insight. He's a contributing editor, and he was the former chief marketing officer of Kodak. Some flashbacks, Deirdre.